My dad punched me in the face, then dragged me out by my hair in front of 68 guests at my brother's promotion party. My brother clapped and said, "You had it coming." No one stopped them, but they didn't know. I made one call. By morning, their lives were in ruins. Hey, Reddit. I still remember the exact color of the lights that night. Golden, warm, soft, like everything was meant to look perfect. It was my brother's promotion party, a family celebration. My mom had said. Except that somehow it felt like a stage, one where I didn't belong. People smiled as I entered, but their eyes told another story. My brother Daniel stood in the center of it all, surrounded by colleagues, our parents glowing with pride. He'd just been promoted to vice president at the firm. And me? I was the black sheep, the one who never measured up. I tried to keep my distance, holding a glass of water, watching him toast to his journey. But then Dad spotted me. His smile disappeared the second our eyes met. "You're late," he said sharply, loud enough for the nearest guests to hear. "You can't even do one thing right. Even showing up on time." I froze, embarrassed, whispering. I was stuck in traffic. He sneered. Excuses. Always excuses. A few people nearby turned away, pretending not to notice. I wanted to disappear, but Daniel noticed, too, and he laughed. "Relax, Dad," he said, smirking. "She's not exactly the punctual type." Everyone chuckled politely. Everyone except me. I took a deep breath, stepped closer, and said quietly, "I came here to congratulate you, not to be mocked." Dad's face hardened. "Don't talk back." Mom touched his arm, whispering, "Not here." But he brushed her off. And then it happened. In front of 68 guests, our family, friends, co-workers, he struck me. A sharp blinding pain exploded across my face. I stumbled backward, the room spinning. Laughter and chatter froze midair. Then he grabbed my hair. I gasped, trying to pull away, but his grip tightened. Before I could say a word, he dragged me across the floor toward the door like I was nothing. No one. People stared, but no one moved. Not one person. I looked up desperate and saw Daniel. He was clapping. Actually clapping. "You had it coming," he said. "You always ruin everything." I stopped fighting. Something inside me just broke. Dad threw me outside. The door slammed shut. And then there was silence. The kind that makes you realize you're utterly alone. I stood there on the pavement, trembling, humiliated, one side of my face burning, my hair tangled in my fingers. And then slowly I laughed. Not out of humor, out of disbelief, out of rage. So deep it started to sound like calm because that night I realized something. They weren't going to stop. Not until someone made them. I wiped my face, grabbed my phone, and made a single call. "It's me," I whispered. "I'm ready." The voice on the other end replied calmly, "Understood. We'll start tonight." For years, I'd been silent about the way things really were in our family. The threats, the insults, the lies. But I wasn't powerless anymore. You see, I worked for the same company my brother had just been promoted in. Only he didn't know what I'd found. Files, transactions, reports, illegal ones. Months earlier, I discovered that Dad and Daniel had been laundering money through the family business for years. I tried to confront them quietly. They'd laughed it off, told me I didn't understand how business worked, but I'd saved everything. Emails, receipts, wire transfers, proof. I'd contacted a lawyer. And that night, after being humiliated in front of everyone, I decided it was time to end it. By the time I reached home, my face was swollen and red. I looked in the mirror and didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I opened my laptop and began uploading. Every file, every transaction, every lie they buried. I didn't send it to the police. Not yet. I sent it to the company's internal fraud division, the same one that handled executive corruption. And I IC'd their biggest investors. Then I sat down on my bed, placed an ice pack on my face, and waited. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed once. A message from the lawyer received. "It's done. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there in silence, letting the adrenaline fade, knowing tomorrow would change everything. The next morning, my phone was flooded with missed calls. 53 of them. Mom, Dad, Daniel, even my brother's wife. I didn't answer any of them. Then a news alert popped up. Redwood financial executives under investigation for fraud allegations. My father's name, my brother's name, right there. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I just breathed for the first time in years. Really breathed. Because this wasn't revenge. It was justice. They tore me down in front of everyone and I'd exposed them in front of the world. Later that evening, I received one last call from my mother. Her voice was shaking. How could you do this to us? She whispered. You've ruined the family. I closed my eyes. No, Mom, I said softly. You ruined it the night he hit me and no one stopped him. And then I hung up. That night, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel broken. I felt free. By sunrise, their empire had collapsed. But what happened when the police arrived and my father tried to blame me turned the story into something none of us expected. By the time the sun came up, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 67 missed calls, 12 new voicemails, and one breaking news alert that made my hands go cold. Redwood financial executives arrested in overnight raid. My father, my brother, both in custody. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen, my breath uneven. For a long time, I didn't know whether to feel relief or sadness. Because when people destroy you piece by piece for years, you don't cheer when karma finally arrives. You just feel empty. The TV played in the background. Reporters swarmed the gates of our old family estate. Phrases like embezzlement, tax fraud, and corporate misconduct filled the air. Each word hit like a note in some twisted song. Then the camera angle shifted. There they were. Dad, handcuffed, eyes full of fury. Daniel, pale, hiding behind dark glasses, jaw clenched. Mom, standing behind the gate, crying into a towel. And me, sitting alone in my apartment, watching everything they'd built burn. Hours passed before my phone rang again. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Is this Miss Cole? A man's voice asked. This is Detective Harris. I'd like to meet and get your statement regarding the files you submitted. My throat tightened. Are they? Yes, he said quietly. They've been charged. But your father's already talking. Talking? Of course he was. He was the kind of man who'd blame the rain for being wet. The detective continued. He claims you were involved, that you were the one who accessed and distributed company data. I closed my eyes. There it was, the final blow. All right, I said softly. Then I guess it's time I tell you everything. That afternoon, I walked into the station with a folder under my arm. Inside it, every document, every email, every transaction, and a small flash drive, proof that I'd been right. The detective met me in the lobby, kind but guarded. You sure you're ready for this? He asked. I've been ready for years. They led me into an interview room, cold, gray, silent. On the table were printed statements. My father's handwriting. He'd written that I'd hacked company records, that I'd blackmailed my brother, that I was a disgruntled child trying to ruin their reputation. I smiled sadly. Typical. When the detective asked if I had a response, I slid the flash drive across the table. Everything you need is on that drive, I said. Encrypted backups, company timestamps, my digital signature logs. It proves I accessed those files legally under my role as compliance analyst. He plugged it in, started scrolling, and within minutes his expression changed. His posture straightened and then a small smile. This, he said, is airtight. Later, they brought Dad in. He looked smaller somehow, older, grayer, no longer the man who stood tall at parties shouting orders. But his eyes were still the same, cold. He sat down across from me, his hands cuffed, his voice a mixture of disbelief and anger. You think you've won, he hissed. You destroyed your own family. I didn't flinch. No, Dad, I said calmly. I just stopped you from destroying anyone else. He slammed his fists against the table, chains rattling. You ungrateful. Stop. I cut in. You hit me. You humiliated me. You used my silence as your permission. That ends now. For a second, he looked like he wanted to speak. Maybe to apologize. Maybe to curse me, but he didn't. The guards let him out. That was the last time I ever saw him. Days later, I stood outside the courthouse watching reporters crowd around the gates. The world was finally seeing the truth, and I finally felt lighter. Daniel had been charged with financial misconduct. Dad faced multiple fraud counts. Their accounts were frozen, assets seized, reputations gone. Meanwhile, my name was cleared publicly. The firm released a statement praising the courage of an internal whistleblower. That whistleblower was me. That night, as I walked home, I got a call from my grandmother, the one person who'd always believed in me. Sweetheart, she said softly. I saw everything on the news. You did the right thing. I took a deep breath, eyes burning. It doesn't feel good, Grandma. She chuckled quietly. Doing the right thing never feels good at first, but one day you'll wake up and it won't hurt anymore. Weeks passed. The world moved on, but I didn't go back to my old life. I left that company, that city that passed. I took my savings, the ones they didn't know existed, and moved to the coast. A small town, quiet streets, an apartment overlooking the water. Sometimes I still wake up from dreams of that night, the laughter, the slap, the humiliation. But then I hear the waves outside, the distant sound of seagulls, and I remember. I made it out. One evening, months later, I got an email. It was from Daniel. I'm sorry, it said simply. I didn't know what he'd do that night. I stared at the screen for a long time. I never replied because some wounds don't need apologies, they need closure, and mine had finally arrived. I closed my laptop, stepped onto the balcony, and looked at the sunset. The same hands that once trembled now rested calmly on the railing. The same girl who once begged for respect now owned her peace. I smiled, whispered into the wind. You laughed at me that night, but I'm the one still standing. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's quiet. It's patient. It's when you stand in the ruins of what they built on your pain and realize you've already moved.